So in order to remain on track and on time, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time introducing our featured guest. Suffice to say that if you read anything about Mr. Andrew Yang, you will quickly find out that he is an impressive individual with a record of public service, entrepreneur, and has officially thrown his hat into a crowded field for the Democratic nomination of President of the United States. So I think he is nearby the stage. I have lost him in the crowd. And here he is. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Yang. We've been playing musical chairs with the water, but I think that is untouched.
My new water, my new old water.
Yes, I think that is untouched. Can I just lead out with the first question?
You got it.
Simeon is our question guru and has scripted some really good questions for us. But this is a very basic question, a fundamental question that most people want to know when they hear from the candidates. But why are you running for President of the United States?
I'm running for president because I think we've been fundamentally dishonest about the reason why Donald Trump's our president. That's not one reason, there are multiple reasons. But to me, the driving reason was that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, and 40,000 right here in Iowa. And if you look at the voting district data, there's a straight line up between the adoption of industrial automation in a district and the movement towards Trump. And unfortunately, my friends in Silicon Valley believe, and I agree with them, that we're going to do the same thing to millions of retail workers, call center workers, fast food workers, truck drivers, and on through the economy. We're in the third inning of what they're calling the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And Donald Trump is a symptom. He's not the disease. So I'm running for president to let people know it is not immigrants that are causing these economic concerns. We all know this, I believe. It's technology and the fact that our economy is evolving in a way that's pushing more and more people to the sidelines. So I'm running for president to let the American people know that that's the problem we need to solve, and then enacting meaningful solutions, including a dividend of $1,000 a month for everyone in America starting at age 18.
Yeah! Okay, all right.
Andrew, can you see all these little faces over here?
Oh, I do see little faces.
Hi, we're so happy you guys are here. There is just this crowd of young little children, really excited to be here.
We will need to see your ID if you have an alcoholic beverage.
My question is, what do you say to young people like these young folks right here who are looking at you with these eyes about deciding to run for office? What do you say to young folks who are kind of looking at you as inspiration?
Well, right now I say grow up quick so you can vote. But the people in Iowa, I mean, this place is so politically supercharged. I feel like you all practice democracy at a much higher level, so I would have very little to add to the people here. It's really the people in the rest of the country that feel like their vote doesn't matter. And the nastiest part is they're largely correct, that our system's been overrun by corporate money, and people sense that if I'm not a millionaire and it's like I don't live in a particular place. And the reason why I'm here and all the other candidates are here is that you all have an historic level of power. It does not feel like it all the time. You're just living your life, you're hanging out, every once in a while a presidential candidate comes through. But if the people of Iowa decide to get behind a vision of an economy, a trickle-up economy from people and families and communities up, we can take that vision to the rest of the country in 2020 and it'll spread like wildfire. And that's a power that only you have. And that's unique to Iowa. It's one reason why I love coming here.
So Andrew, you called it a freedom dividend is what it was, right? $1,000 for every single person 18 to 65?
And it's actually now 18 till you expire.
Till you expire, okay. Also known as a universal basic income program. What is this crazy socialist policy that you speak of? How does it work? And why do you think it's needed right now?
Yeah. So the great thing is that if you look at our history, this is a deeply American idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of the country, called it the citizen's dividend. Martin Luther King was for it in the 60s, called it guaranteed minimum income, and he championed it in 1967, the year until he was killed the next year. Milton Friedman and 1,000 economists signed a study saying this would be tremendous for America. It was called the negative income tax. And it passed the House of Representatives under Richard Nixon in 1971 twice. And then it became law in 11 years later in one state, where now in that state everyone gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year. In what state is that?
Alaska.
And how do they pay for it?
Oil.
And what is the oil of the 21st century?
Technology.
I love that. I heard like marijuana, technology.
I think you may know that guy out there.
So you talk about the crazy idea. I mean, they're already doing it in Alaska, and they love it. They call it the oil check. And we're going to call this the tech check, and then we're going to love it.
So how do you pay for it?
So, how much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? $0. So I'm going to suggest that if you're a $1 trillion company and you pay $0 in taxes, then something has gone wrong with us. It's not their accountant's fault. Their accountants are just doing their jobs. It's our fault, our leaders' fault, that we would let Amazon pay $0 taxes. So what we do is we pass a value-added tax that then gets everyone here in this room a tiny slice of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad, every robot truck mile, and then we give it to you all. And yeah, some of that money will float up to Jeff and the gang. Again, it's like, buy an extra thing or two. But most of the money would stay right here in Iowa. It would grow your consumer economy by 15%. It would create 40,000 new jobs. And for the young people here, and most of you are young, it would give you a path to stay here if that's what you want to do. Because the tough part here in Iowa is that many people think they have to move to Des Moines or move to Chicago or leave the state in order to lead a good life, and it does not have to be that way.
Especially when you got the Yacht Club. So I attended a dinner at Coe College in Cedar Rapids with the young Democrats there. And another legislator that was with me actually brought, we are getting some feedback.
Too much trouble.
Too much trouble. Too much truth.
Anytime there's a technical problem, I just say it's the Russians.
It is.
It's all right. It's
I'll
sounding
make a
better
note
already.
to revisit that subject.
Yeah.
So a legislator brought this up, and I don't think they were too steeped in the idea, but we ended up having a robust conversation. And the professor that was there at the table with us, he was a history professor, and he was supporting a universal basic income. And his point was, think about people's relationship to work. And this was mind-blowing to me because I never thought about it in this way. Surely you have, but I'd like your feedback here. So he said, look, you all want to grow up and you want to go into social services. Historically, they don't earn a whole lot of money in those fields or in those professions. But a lot of folks here are going to go get jobs that offer certain benefits, and they're going to be tethered to that job. And in many cases, they're not going to feel free to pursue their dreams and pursue other jobs or start a business because they're tethered to the job because of the benefits. And so this professor offered the position that, I support it because I think we're going to have more people doing things they actually want to do because they're going to have a little more support there to either buy benefits or hopefully we can have a country where we have universal health care. So, for those people, and there are a lot of Democrats that aren't going to warm to this idea of a universal basic income, how do we talk about a larger perspective of what this actually could mean for individuals in this country?
Well, I'm glad you raised it. I have to say, we have to get Democrats charged up about what $1,000 a month would actually mean in real life. The Democratic Party is supposed to be the party of female empowerment. There are millions of women around the country who are stuck in exploitative or abusive jobs or relationships that would actually be improved by $1,000 a month. With the economic freedom, you're walking into this situation. So what does the Democratic Party want to do? Does it want to talk about female empowerment? Does it want to put $1,000 a month into people's hands? Talk about elevating communities of color. You know what would help a lot with that? $1,000 a month. Because if you're in an underprivileged community, you have lower access to education and job opportunities. Your kids are having a harder time learning, and putting this money into the family's hands would be a tremendous boost. LGBTQ, more likely to get kicked out of the house and fired from a job. You want to help with that? $1,000 a month. We have to start embracing the things we can actually do to make people's lives better. And this should be priority number one for the Democratic Party, because we can actually accomplish a lot of the social goals we have in real life right now.
You mentioned how the program might benefit specific groups that have been historically discriminated against. Let's just talk about like how that. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Do you think there should be race-specific measures to address economic inequality, health disparities, disparities and inequality in our educational system? When you consider things like if you're a black household or you're a black worker and you have a college degree, you're still likely to make less than someone who's white and has a high school diploma. And on down the list, in healthcare, in education, in home ownership, in wealth, there seems to be a very specific race-related disparity, disconnect in our economy and the way our society works. And so some might argue that while a universal basic income or a freedom dividend, as you call it, might be a great first step, there still is a lot more that we can do. And just to sort of close out this point, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Andrew, David Brooks, a New York Times columnist, conservative columnist, no liberal or progressive thinker, writer, he recently penned in the New York Times that he had been convinced that reparations was needed now because he has spent time, touring the South and looking at, communities of color and spending time in communities of color. And he became convinced that now was the time that our federal government should do something about reparations. So what do you think about that?
I love it. I read Ta-Nehisi Coates, and the moral case is 100% compelling.
Yeah.
Like, this country was built on the backs of slaves. There are no two ways about it. And so if you say to me, hey, like, does a freedom dividend, is that reparations? Of course not. Like, the freedom dividend is something that can help put us in position to move forward. And I'm going to suggest that after we have this boot of scarcity off of our throats, then we can move towards addressing more of the fundamental inequities you're talking about. So this is a big first step, but I would certainly not say that this. And the truth is that there's nothing we can do to undo the legacy of slavery. You can't retrace history in generations. You can't retrace the blood of millions of African Americans over the years. So I'm 100% on board with the moral case, and I would not ever claim that a freedom dividend that treats everyone the same is accomplishing the goal of reparations.
So let's fast forward a year. You're elected president. Yay,
Yes.
Yang gang, shout out. Hashtag Yang
It's
gang.
because of you all, and I'm going to celebrate.
You're elected president. You passed universal basic income. Everyone gets $1,000. Your next step to addressing some of these inequalities is what?
Well, so I have an agenda that helps the African American community more specifically. So one was we get rid of private prisons because it makes no sense to have prisons. Two, we legalize marijuana, and then I'm going to mass pardon everyone who's in jail for a nonviolent drug offense. And I have a feeling we know just about everyone who's in jail for that stuff is going to be black. And I'm going to high-five them all out of the way of the jail. And I'm going to do it on April 20th, 2021. Third, we need to support, it's all real. I don't know if you noticed, but Donald Trump's the president. Like, we can really make this
Anything can happen.
High fives to the president.
I would support historically black colleges and universities because they've done an incredible job over the generations, except right now our universities have become these big businesses, and so you have these HBCUs that don't have the endowments, and so you need to probably support those and try and make sure that they can be with us for generations to come. So there's a lot of things we can do relatively quickly, I'm happy to say, but like I said, I mean, this is going to be an ongoing generational process, and there'll probably never be a point where we look up and be like, yeah, we made everything right.
We did it.
That's not just how it works. Like, we just have to
completely
keep trying
equal.
to work at it every day.
Excellent.
Andrew, can you talk to us a little bit? You've already talked a little bit about what you call female empowerment. Can you talk to us a little bit about where you stand on women's reproductive health? And I just heard you say something about universal health care, so that's great. Specifically, where do you stand on women's right to access abortion?
I think men should just leave the room and let women decide what to do. And I have a feeling I know what women would decide to do. On the flip side, if men got pregnant, there'd be abortion everywhere. You know what I mean? It'd be like bringing abortion to every convenience store. It'd be like so for men to decide women's reproductive rights, to me, just makes no sense. So I would just be like, you handle it. I have a feeling I know what you're going to do, and you know, it's. Now I will also say, not to make light of it. Like, I'm a parent. I've got 2 young children, 6 and 3. One of whom is autistic, and. You know, every person who's pregnant, I mean, we should hopefully be in a position where we're celebrating like that baby's arrival, and they come into a loving home and they have a beautiful life. And I'm going to suggest that one thing that might help that happen for more people is having $1,000 a month in every adult's hands. Or if you get pregnant, you'd be like, oh, I can make this work. You know, it's like that. Right now, it's so again, I don't want to bring everything back to the fact that cash will help certain situations, but for women's reproductive rights, it should be totally up to women, and whatever you decide, I would get on board with and support them.
I feel like your agenda, your platform is slowly winning over everyone here in the audience. I imagine that you get a similar response at other events. But what's your pathway to winning this nomination? It's a crowded field, it's an impressive field, it just got a little bit bigger tonight. How do you get the Democratic nomination for the president?
Holy cow, it's so fun. So I just officially qualified for the DNC debate. I'm polling at 1% according to Monmouth, and no one's ever heard of me. The prediction markets have me at 7%. I'm like 5th.
How does that work, though? The prediction markets.
So the prediction markets is there are all of these like internet types who then they set up just like a bookmaking and being like, hey, who do you think is going to be the Democratic nominee to be the president? And right now I'm at 7%, which is, I'm going to suggest, pretty high for a guy who no one has ever heard of. And so my path, my path to nomination really goes through Iowa. And so my challenge here, there are going to be about 250,000 Iowans who caucus in 2020. Now, like you said, crowded field, let's call it 15 to 20 candidates. So my challenge is I need to get approximately 40,000 Iowans who go to the caucuses on board with the fact that if we put $1,000 a month into your hands, that this economy will function better. Now, can I do that? We're going to find out, but I think I can do that. And then after, let's say I don't win Iowa, let's say I finish top 3. I'm still the story out of Iowa. Everyone's still going to be like the anonymous Asian man who wants to get over just came out of Iowa, top 3. And then we go to New Hampshire, and you know what the third party of New Hampshire is? Libertarians. And you know what the Libertarians love? The Freedom Dividend. It's named after them. And it's an open primary. Libertarian, you can vote in either one. So if I finish strongly here, I can finish strongly and even win New Hampshire. And then it's game on. Then everyone's going to be looking around and be like, how do we stop this? There's no stopping it. So I've got a real path to victory. I'm raising $30,000 a day in increments of $16, $17, $18, $19. My fans are even cheaper than Bernie's. But this wave is on, and it's growing, and if you all, with your help, we get 40,000 Iowans to show up in the caucuses next February, we can take this all the way to the White House.
You were recently on Fox News, and you gave a pretty in-depth interview. I caught some clips of it before of this interview, and I was getting text messages from a lot of my friends saying, you gotta check this out, you gotta check this out. They were really surprised that a candidate for president running to capture the Democratic nomination went on Fox News. Tell me why you did that.
Well, I've been on Fox News multiple times, and the reason I went on is that they asked me to go on. No, seriously. It's like, let's imagine you're Andrew Yang, you're running for president, you're like, trying to introduce yourself to Americans as fast as possible. And it's not like I had a choice between CNN, MSNBC, and Fox, and I was like, ooh, Fox. That's not the way it went down. It was just like Fox, and that's it. And so then I'm just like, all right, I'll go on Fox. I'll go on Fox. Now, and like to the bigger point, though, I mean, in order for us to win the big election, we do have to appeal to Americans who watch Fox. We have to appeal to Americans who might not agree with us on every front. And so. So the truth of it is, like, I went because they asked me, and I'm willing to go just about anywhere where people will want to have an honest conversation with me, and it will reach a lot of Americans.
So you know, that was not a criticism, by the way. I thought it was.
No, I didn't think it was.
I thought it was pretty courageous. And a follow-up I have to you is, you said something. You know, you're not. It's not like you have a choice. At CNN, MSNBC, BBC, whoever else, they're not asking. Do you feel like there's certain candidates that are running who sort of have a corner on the market? Do you feel that the DNC even may be complicit even in propping up other candidates? I mean, give us sort of some inside baseball. How does that all work itself out?
Sure. So I will say happily, the DNC seems completely transparent and fair this time. They were very burnt by the fact that everyone knows they sandbagged Bernie, and everyone's still pissed about it. I supported Bernie. And so, not this time, though.
Clarification.
So the DNC's been great. And we got to give them benefit of the doubt. It's like a different set of people. Like, they turned over that whole team. So being mad at them about what like some people did, like, you know, the last cycle. Corporate media, I can't speak for them. Like, I will say that the corporate media does seem really into certain candidates and less into others. But I'm now getting invitations from CNN and MSNBC because I made the Democratic debate threshold, and then everyone's like, hey, this guy's going to be on the debates, and we're going to look really dumb. And we've never had him on. And the fact that I had to earn my way there with your help, I'm totally cool with. Like, you know, I mean, if they just wanted me to see what I could do, I mean, it's fine. They're going to see what we all can do in a minute, you know what I mean?
Andrew, you corrected us back there when we said you were at a book signing. You're just at a book signing, but you have multiple books, 2 books, right?
Yes.
Tell us your books. What are the names of them?
Right,
Why
so
should people read them?
You're not supposed to say this, but the second book's a lot better than the first. So the first book I wrote is called Smart People Should Build Things. It's about how we have too many bright people heading to Wall Street and doing stuff that doesn't really move us forward, and that what they should be doing is starting generative businesses in places like Iowa City. So that's what Smart People Should Build Things is about. And then the second book I wrote is called The War on Normal People, and it's about how we're automating away the most common jobs in our economy, and that AI is going to start replacing bookkeepers and accountants and lawyers and radiologists, and that we need to get our shit together as fast as possible if we're going to have a country that we're still proud of in next years. Sorry, kids.
There's normally not children here, but we're really happy you're here.
So the second book, and here I'll give you a story that make my whatever. So I was writing the second book, and I had an instinct that the second book was going to be like a bigger deal than the first book was. So then I looked at my first book, and I was like, I'm going to take like the most important ideas in the first book and just like wedge them into one chapter in the second book. That was what I did. So if you read War on Normal People, you got like the highlights of the first book like wedged into chapter 9.
So
glad
you're undermining your first book's sales.
I really am undermining my first book's sales. Let's go to book number 2. It's not like my children. I don't have to love them both equally.
I'm really glad you're on the show because it was really hard to get this crowd to laugh before you came up. So thank you. Thank you.
Another thing that one of my friends put me on was this Twitter hashtag called Yang Gang. If you guys haven't checked it out, you should. Talk to us about this almost cult following you've cultivated since you've been running for president. Hashtag Yang Gang.
Yeah. So the Yang Gang is a very recent development. And it arose, it seems it arose out of 2 media appearances. One I did in the Joe Rogan Experience, and then the other was at the Breakfast Club.
Nice.
And between those 2 things, there are a lot of people who are very strong in the internet, shall we say.
Strong on the internet, I like that.
That's a good way to put it.
And then they eventually, I think they got together somewhere, and then so they said, hey, we're going to create memes for the Yankee campaign. And then all of a sudden, I was like, wow, my face is on very interesting things. So my wife and I were like looking at them, and she was like laughing hysterically the whole thing. So I have to say, like, I enjoy it, and I'm grateful to the Yang Gang. It's just, I mean, to me, like, it's really funny to see your name get out there in that particular way.
Their meme game is really strong and creative, though. I mean, they're a creative bunch.
I have to admit, I've been so, like, there have been at least a dozen times I've just wanted to tweet, secure the bag. But then I thought better of it. Because it's like,
No, you should totally do that.
I may do that.
The Yang Gang will be there.
But just to toot your horn, Andrew, and I think it is connected to your message of the freedom dividend, and you've been able to appeal to this generation, I think, of particularly young white men and males who've been disaffected by the economy, who Donald Trump may have appealed to. And I think your message is starting to resonate that the economy is rigged or it's working against working people. There's not a fair way to get ahead. So to your credit, I think you've tapped into something.
Well, this economy is punitive, bordering on inhuman. And you can just see it in the numbers. But like, how many of you knew that our life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years?
Yes.
Like, who cares about GDP if you're literally dying of drug overdoses and suicides at record levels? So we have to stop cheerleading these phantom economic stats and just like get real. Like mental health problems, record high, suicides, record high, drug overdoses, all-time highs. We have right now the same labor force participation rate as Ecuador and Costa Rica. No offense to those countries, but that's still not where you want to be, as an industrialized country, like lower than just about all the others. So, like, one of my key pillars as president will be I'm going to update GDP to mental health and actually tell us how we're doing. Because you can't improve if you're looking at the wrong measurements. And GDP is going to guide us off a cliff. AI is going to be great for GDP. It's going to be terrible for people here in Iowa. You have some of these frankly exploitative schools, like loading people up with student loan debt and the rest of it. Like, believe it or not, that's actually good for GDP too, because they like pay all these vendors, but that's terrible for people. I'm going to forgive a lot of that student loan debt. That's no, really. And I'm like passionate about this because during the bank bailout, they printed $4 trillion for the banks. Do you all remember voting on that? I don't. And they had a choice at that moment. They said, we have two choices. One, we're going to plow trillions of dollars to the banks. Or two, we're going to forgive the mortgages that people owe money on. And if they'd taken number two, the money would have gone to families, it would have kept their homes, the rest of it. But no, they chose the banks. So this time, we have the same choice. We have a $1.5 trillion in school loan debt that's weighing down young people. Are we going to choose our young people, or are we going to choose the banks? I'm going to choose the young people.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a question about Game of Thrones.
Yes.
/ climate change.
Yes.
So, there was a recent UN report that said that we've just entered another tipping point with respect to climate.
I know, it's so depressing.
Right,
man.
and it's every time you read it, and the commentator said it's like Game of Thrones, where the two factions are fighting against each other, but they're missing sort of the mortal existential threat, which are the White Walkers, right? Which is a perfect analogy for like climate change, you know? We're sort of caught in these silly, sometimes serious threats or political debates, but when it comes to climate change, which poses an existential threat to our way of living and being, we're unable to do something. So, first question. Do you watch Game of Thrones?
Yes, very much so.
Are you excited for the upcoming season?
Yeah, I'm like, it's going to be a lot to take in. But you probably saw, like, I said that if I were president, I would give everyone HBO Go passwords. And I would say, in the interest of national unity. So.
And second question, a more serious question. You've come out on support of the Green New Deal, but I don't think it doesn't seem like the challenge is a policy one, where we know what to do, whether it's the Green New Deal or something else. It's a political one. So how do we finally make progress on this issue?
Yeah, so the last 4 years have been the 4 warmest years in recorded history. So you have to be out of your mind not to see that the Earth is warming and that it's about to pick up steam. So I think climate change is an existential threat 1A, and here's how we get better at fighting it. Because like you said, it's a political will thing. So right now in this country, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and 57% can't afford an unexpected $500 bill. So you go to them and say, hey, we need to work on climate change. A lot of them will say, look, I can't pay my bills. The penguins can wait. Is that right? No. But if you have a mindset of scarcity, you have your head down, then it's very, very hard to get it up. So you make me president, I issue the freedom dividend, $1,000 a month, and then their heads come up. And then you come to them and say, hey, we need to worry about climate change. And look at their children and say, yeah, we do. And then we go very, very hard on the goals of the Green New Deal and try and move towards renewables. But you can't do one without the other. You can't ask a population of people that feel like their future is insecure all the time to focus on the big problems.
I do want to save some time for question and answers, but I'm just having a blast up here.
Great.
So I've got a couple more questions for you. You're running for president, man.
Yeah, I know.
That's a mind-boggling thing to me.
And I'm winning.
Hashtag secure the bag.
Secure the bag. So this question is just, what's it like? And it looks like you're having a lot of fun, by the way. So talk to me about that. What's this experience like running for president?
The toughest part is being away from my family, because I've got 2 boys, 6 and 3. FaceTime helps, but I miss them a great deal. That's like the hardest thing about it. Other than that, it's a blast.
What do you enjoy the most about it?
So a lot of it's just first, my team is incredible. So imagine, if you will, people that left their jobs or law school or whatever and took giant pay cuts to come work for the Andrew Yang campaign when no one knew who I was. You know?
It's a special thing.
It's a special thing. I mean, they're just exceptional human beings. So it's like working with them every day is a joy, and then coming to Iowa and then seeing that some people can really see the vision and see we can make this happen together. The energy is incredible. It's really, humanity first, and I feel like I'm becoming more human through this process from my robotic roots. So it's just a lot of fun on that side. If my family magically could teleport around and hang out with me, we'd be having a blast. I'm going to bring them to Iowa over the kids' spring break because right now they're in school, so you can't just grab them every time. But then I said to my wife, I was like, hey baby, it's like spring break. You want to come with me to Iowa? So they're going to...
Oh, go to spring break for Iowa.
Husband of the year.
More like wife of the year, man. I owe her so much. I owe her. You guys have to help me win for her. I'm just kidding.
You made a comment. You talked about your robotic roots. Talk to us about growing up. What was it like?
So I grew up the only Asian kid in an all-white neighborhood in upstate New York. And I skipped a grade 2, so I was extra skinny. And so that was like a tough environment in some ways. So I always felt like this need to prove myself, and my masculinity was always in question. And I get racial epithets all the time because I'm the only Asian kid, and so I get into fights and lose all the time. But it never occurred to me not to fight. It was like, all right, I guess it's time to fight again. And then
I like that. I like that.
So that's. So the robotic passing was very much a joke because I was a deeply sensitive kid. I was very, bookish and read a lot and had these giant Coke bottle glasses because they hadn't invented thin glasses yet. They hadn't invented a lot of stuff yet. So in first grade, they're like, we need glasses. They're like, wow. So that's a pretty much the Andrew Yang, childhood story. And give you a sense of it.
Your parents were highly educated.
Yeah.
Father, professor.
My father's now, he's just retired, but yeah, he was a professor. He was a physicist who generated 69 U.S. patents for GE and IBM.
Mother got a master's degree in chemistry?
In math and statistics.
Math and statistics, and then became an artist?
Yeah.
Okay. Talk to us. So I've got a lot of friends who have highly successful parents, and they grow up and they talk about, there's this pressure to perform and to live up to sort of their narrative, their expectations. And you've done pretty well. You've attended some pretty good schools for yourself. Just give us a sense of, anybody else living sort of under the aspirations of others, or maybe that wasn't your case.
Well,
talk to us about that.
No, I certainly had a lot of pressure to do well in school, but I want to say too, it's I'm up here now, I'm running for president, I seem successful and shiny and the rest of it. I remember being your age and still trying to figure it out. I went to law school, which was maybe not the best choice, and practiced law for 5 miserable months. And then I quit that job, and my parents were like really concerned because I still owed $100,000 in law school. That's one reason I get it. Like you know, I remember it. And then my little company that I started completely flopped. Like you know, I raised some money and then we lost the money, and then like you know the dot-com bubble burst. My parents were still telling my friends I was a lawyer, you know. and then my friends were having birthday parties I couldn't afford to attend because like I was broke, and, like I you know moved in with my friends. So like there's like the shininess, but like I went through some like real confidence testing times. For a number of years, and it's one reason why I appreciate it. So like after my company was sold in 2009, I turned around and started a nonprofit to train young entrepreneurs because of that. Because I remembered what it was like to be a young entrepreneur trying to figure it out, and it was so hard. And so I created an organization to try and create a support network for young entrepreneurs. And if you like documentaries, there's a movie on Netflix about my organization now. I make cameos. I have an IMDb credit as myself. Called Generation Startup, to give you a sense of the work that I was doing. But that's, you know, like to me, that was like the high point of my career, is creating that organization and creating thousands of jobs and being, like I got to bring my wife to meet President Obama.
Yeah, I was going to say, you caught the attention of the White House, and President Obama asked you to do some work there after that. Do you talk about that experience?
Yeah, so I was named a champion of change by the Obama White House, also known as the Good White House. And then an ambassador of entrepreneurship. So you know, I was there with a bunch of celebrities, and you know, and it was. I got to bring my wife. I was the only person who brought my spouse. It was so weird. It was like you come and there was like, this is my VP of da da da. This is my like comms person. I was like, this is my wife, man. I don't know what the rest of you are doing. So spending time in the Obama White House. So like you know like that was the high point of my career. But then I got this after Donald Trump won the election in 2016. I realized that my work was like pouring water into a bathtub that has a giant hole ripped in the bottom. And so like you can't be like celebrated for like still pouring water. So you have to like re-examine things and say, okay, how do you plug the hole? And this hole I'm talking about is the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It's like the greatest economic transformation in the history of the country. And for whatever reason, none of our politicians want to talk about it. Most of them, if you're generous, they just don't understand it. But I think it's darker than that, truly. Because when I talk to them, it's not just understanding, it's like willful blinders. It's like, you know, because we've been so brainwashed by the market and worshiping the almighty dollar that we have like these crazy fantasies about turning coal miners into software engineers. That makes zero sense. Like you know, what planet, like would you even think that? You know what planet? Unfortunately, this planet. Because we're so like inured, it's like, I have no value unless I have economic value.
Right.
You have lost your economic value, I must transform you into something that does have economic value.
Yeah.
It's perverse, and we can stop it.
It's funny you said that. I'm sure we're all familiar with recent news that there were quite a few celebrities who had paid up to several $100,000 or $1 million, sometimes like, faking, you know, being a college or high school athlete to get into.
So how much did your parents pay?
They probably, no, they wouldn't have done it.
Tomorrow.
Well, to your sort of, to go back to your history as an entrepreneur, working for startups, we live in Iowa City. We're in Iowa City right now at the Yacht Club. You spent some time in Cedar Rapids recently. I'm sure you'll go to Des Moines, or you've been to Des Moines.
This is my 9th time in Iowa. You might not know it, but like I've been
I didn't know that, but you know, these are communities that are doing a lot of work to build up the startup entrepreneurial scenes and communities here, supporting entrepreneurs and basically creating the types of infrastructure and systems and ecosystems so that if you want to start a business or even create a startup, you don't have to go to Silicon Valley, or you don't feel like you have to go to New York to be successful. Yeah. So what's your advice to communities like Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, and Des Moines, who kind of want to build up that entrepreneurial community ecosystem here in the Midwest or in the heartland, and not and keep talent here?
No. I'm friends with some of those entrepreneurs, and I have to say, I love the entrepreneurs of Des Moines, Iowa City, and Cedar Rapids. Like the people that I've met. And the key from everything I've seen in these 18 cities I've entrepreneur worked in is you have to have some companies that become successful and become role models for the others. And if that company gets really successful and then starts throwing off VPs who leave and then start new companies, if it gets bought, then you have like a whole new suite of angel investors. And so what happens is there's a progression, but nothing works until a couple of companies reach a certain point. And then you hope that those people then stick around the community. And I will say that will happen here in Iowa because there's a lot of love and loyalty for the community here.
One right here next to me. Simeon.
Yeah.
No, Simeon's an entrepreneur.
One day.
Simeon is our resident entrepreneur. So you just got to blow up for the rest of us.
Or just someone has to blow up, and then when they blow up, then you win. And I know
Ride their
in
coattails.
Iowa, no, really, that's and in Iowa, like people realize that too. Like I was talking to Ben Milley of Dwala and whatnot, and like everyone's just like, we just gotta whoever is winning, we just gotta elevate that that outfit, and then the rest of you win too.
Very nice. So, if it's okay with my co-host, I'll wrap with our questions and then open it up to questions from the audience. And you're cool with that, right?
Oh yeah, very much so.
So, before we end, I asked our previous guests, when I meet interesting people, I want to know what they're reading, what they are watching, what they're listening to. So, where are you at on all those things?
I just had coffee with this Professor Jonathan Haidt, who wrote a book, Counseling of the American Mind, and then he signed a copy and gave it to me, so that's the book that I'm reading right now. And it's interesting. It's about how, it's like how, it's in some ways it's about like polarization, in some ways it's about education, it's about like a few different topics.
Okay.
In terms of, I'm just waiting for Game of Thrones to come out, man. I'm just like saving up my viewing hours. Movies, yeah, there's nothing right now that I've got like the queue of like the Oscar winners and but I haven't had a chance to watch them.
Another TV show that's out, I can't remember if it's on Amazon or HBO, but High Maintenance. If you haven't checked that out, it's a really, really good show.
Oh, that's good. I've heard good things. That's great, man. I'll check it out.
HBO, that's what the crowd
Is it
said.
HBO? Okay, High Maintenance, check it out.
What are you listening to? What do you listen to?
I like my staff maintains the iTunes or jukebox, but if you leave it to me, I'll listen to a lot of 80s. I still like the 80s music.
Oh, 80s.
There's karaoke happening after this podcast here, by the way. So if we stick around long enough, maybe we can get you some 80s jams.
Yeah, I sing When Doves Cry by Prince.
We absolutely have to do that.
So we're gonna do questions.
We're gonna do
We're
some
gonna take a couple
questions
questions.
right
So Simeon's gonna come around. Obviously, we're not gonna be able to get everybody, but if you put your hand up, we'll try to take your question. Please keep it to a question. It's okay to, I guess, say a little bit, but please don't use this as a soapbox. This is an opportunity for other people to learn about Andrew. So please pose a question, and we're only gonna probably take 3. And sorry if you don't get picked, you gotta come to the next show, I guess. So. Here we go, we have a question.
Hello. Hi, my name is Stanzi. Admittedly, this is my second time hearing about you. First time was from my wonderful partner over here. So, as somebody who is a second-generation immigrant and relatively new to your platform, what are your thoughts, potential policies around the immigration issue?
Yes. So, as you'd imagine, as a son of immigrants myself, I'm very pro-immigrant. I think that immigrants are being unfairly scapegoated for a lot of things in this country. And so at the high end, at a place like University of Iowa, if you have an international student who's getting a degree, we should staple a green card to their diploma, because it makes no sense to educate them here and then say you have to leave. Now, in terms of the over 12 million people who are here undocumented, there are 3 approaches. One, you can pretend you're going to deport them, but obviously you can't. It would devastate regional economies, you'd be separating families. The whole thing is a non-starter. Number 2 is you could do what we're doing now, which is nothing, which has massive problems too, because you don't know who everyone is. They show up at hospitals and get into car accidents and in schools, and there are huge issues with it. So number 3 to me is the best path forward is you create a long-term path to citizenship for people here who are here undocumented that pay taxes and have a clean criminal record, and give them a real path to a long-term life and family here in this country.
Awesome.
Thank you for that. By the way, what a great last name to have in the Iowa City community.
No, it's my first name and it's the worst name to
Oh
have.
my goodness, I'm sorry. Ricky Sanders.
I know.
I'm sorry.
Bane of my existence in
I'm sorry.
undergrad.
Okay,
Bane of
all
my
right, fair
existence.
enough.
My name's Aaron. I'm a high school student at Iowa City West High.
Woo-woo!
I don't have a job yet, but I did have a job recently, but I saw Bernie Sanders a few days ago. I support you over Bernie Sanders, but
Thank you.
I I like him more in one way, unless you say yes to this, because he said he wants to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and I want to know if in addition to the freedom dividend, which is awesome, you would also raise the minimum wage.
Oh. So I am 100% for the spirit of a higher minimum wage, because no one should be working full-time and be poor in this country.
That's right.
It doesn't make sense. I will say, though, that as someone who's run small business and private companies, there are businesses that if you were to increase the minimum wage to, let's say, $15, they would cut back shifts, and they might even get rid of a worker or two. And that's certainly true in an industry like fast food, where if they pay, unfortunately, they pay way too little. They pay like $9 or $10 an hour. But then if you moved it to 15, they would automate away a significant number of those jobs. And it could be that that's cool. Like, you know, you don't have, like, you could make that decision. But the reason why I'm so energized by the freedom dividend is that the freedom dividend is $1,000 a month raise for everyone, and it does not come out of the small businesses. If anything, the small businesses are pumped because all of their customers all of a sudden have an extra $12,000 a month to spend. So after we pass the freedom dividend, if states wanted to implement a higher minimum wage, I would be for that. I mean, it's for people like to decide what's going to work best for them. But I vastly prefer the freedom dividend because it infuses it comes the same thing, gives everyone a raise. But not only does it give the people who are working in these small businesses a raise, it also gives the caregiver who the market ignores, it gives all the people that are doing work, it also gives them a raise. So I'm 100% for the spirit of a higher minimum wage, but I think that there are some other ways that I prefer to reach the same goals.
I'm going to use the prerogative of holding the mic and ask you a question. I'm a small business owner here in Iowa City, and I have a lot of friends who are also small business owners and entrepreneurs, and an issue that we face is very costly health care.
Oh, it's the worst.
We have to buy individual policies. We have to buy individual policies,
yes,
as you know.
I hate that so much.
A couple of years ago, we were left with only one company to buy a policy from, and it's very costly. Now that there's no penalty for not buying health insurance, how do you propose we fix this so that my friends and I can buy affordable health insurance?
I feel for you so much because I've been in your shoes. And right now, our health care system is the worst of all worlds. Not only are we spending twice as much on worse care by the numbers, but it also makes it harder to start a business. It makes it harder to hire. When you do hire someone, unfortunately, you're tempted to just make them into a gig worker contractor because you don't have to pay for their health care. Like, the whole thing is such a massive anchor on our economy. And so the way I would make this better is by moving towards a public option that gets the cost way down and the access way up so that you don't have to worry about it. And one of the things, I'll tell you personally, I've been the CEO and I've been sitting there trying to figure out health insurance plans for my employees. And I was like, why do I have to become a health insurance expert in order to run a company? Like, this is the dumbest system ever. And it wasn't just the money I was spending on employees because we had the money, but it was also, you have to have these conversations with your employees being like, here are your healthcare plan options, like, and then different people have different preferences, and then you always like make someone upset. And I was just like, this is giving me brain damage, and it has nothing to do with my business. Obviously, I mean, it has nothing to do, but I took it incredibly seriously because I had an immense responsibility to my employees to try and find the best. So you can tell I'm passionate about this. I'm going to get this off of your back and off of all of your friends who are entrepreneurs' back, so you can focus on growing your businesses, which is what you should be doing.
Thank you. But then, one quick follow-up question, because some folks are calling for Medicare for all, and some are calling Medicare for those who want it. What would you call what you're proposing, and how would you pay for it?
Yeah, so again, the biggest misconception is like, how do you pay for this stuff? We're spending so much money on our healthcare, it is insane. Yeah. We're spending 18% of GDP, and some of even the plans you saw, you were like, how am I paying this? Like, you're young, healthy, the rest of it. Like, we're just all paying up the wazoo. And after we get a hold of it, like after you see what we can do with the public option, so my plan is just say this Medicare for all, just say it's like, look, it's public option, it's public health care, and everyone gets it, and it's close to free. And the only thing is that when you make use of it, then you have a copay, just so you don't like abuse it and show up like all the time for hypochondriac type stuff. But other than that, it's like essentially going to be nearly cost free, and we can afford that. The reason we can afford that is because we're already spending so much money in the system. And then if you go to the companies and say, look, the money you're currently spending on healthcare, you're going to give it to us, and we're going to like bring the rates down, then you can get it done.
Thank you.
I'm very passionate about that subject because it's killing small businesses in particular.
Thank you. First off, thanks for coming to Iowa City. Very appreciative. So I probably don't need to tell you, but the President of the United States is someone that plays a very significant role on the stage of world politics. And I don't want to name names, but our current president has done a lot of significant work in eroding the trust of the world community in the United States. So I just wanted to know your general thoughts on the role of the U.S. in global foreign policy and what you would do as president to sort of gain back that trust, and what your thoughts are on just the United States on the world role.
Yeah. So I think what's going on with our foreign policy reflects how we're doing at home. So we were falling apart at home. Americans were desperate enough to turn to a narcissist reality TV star as president, and now our allies regard us as erratic and unreliable. And so we have to make ourselves stronger at home, job one, so that then we can project actually sustained policies and values abroad. And I think we've gotten ourselves into entanglements and messes that we should not have been in, and it's cost us thousands of lives, over $1 trillion, tens of thousands of non-American lives. So I would have a policy of restraint and judgment, and just try and rebuild our relationships and alliances and partnerships as robustly as possible. I'm again kind of the opposite of Donald Trump, but it is related to what's going on at home. Is that if you're weak at home, then like trying to be strong abroad will not work. I also want to comment that I'm sort of a cult hero in a lot of Asia. And so I think that there'd be some celebrations in other parts of the world. And if you imagine a world where you get behind me and I become president, how much of the world would be like, holy cow, America really came through on this one.
Oh, that is perfect. That is perfect. Hashtag Yang Gang.
The Yang Gang is very large in other parts of the world.
Andrew, I want to thank you for taking time out of your crazy schedule to join us here.
That was such a blast. Thank you all. Let's give them a round of applause for bringing us together. Awesome. Thank you guys.
I think it's a perfect place to end this podcast. Please, folks, continue to check out our work. Follow us, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the things. If you feel so inclined, offer a donation to us. This is a totally volunteer-run operation. All of our events to date have been free. So in order for us to keep doing really awesome programming, we really need people power. So we thank you for that. Make sure you tip your bartenders and your servers. And I was not kidding when I said there will be karaoke after this. So stick around. I don't know how much time Andrew has, but maybe you can catch a couple selfies with him. And if you're really, really nice and you buy him something to drink, maybe, what do you like to drink?
Ginger ale.
Ginger ale. He's a responsible man running for president. Maybe we can convince him to do an 80s song. But seriously, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you.
Thanks for coming out tonight, guys.